Colours and Forgiveness, Episode 9. Lucy is a young woman with a problem. She wakes one morning to discover she's surrounded by a mist of colour and it won't go away. She feels it's trying to communicate with her. She persuades her boyfriend Tom to visit the mystical Isle of Iona, and while out walking, Lucy meets an old man who tells her colours are something to do with forgiveness. The most exciting part for Lucy is that he can actually see them. Tom cannot, and says she's losing her mind. Therapy changes nothing for Lucy, and Tom leaves. Sad and confused, Lucy realises the only person who can help her is the old man of Iona, Fedor. She returns to Iona and finds his croft, but is shocked to find it derelict and clearly uninhabited for a very long time. Lucy shut the door of the wool shop and went by the side entrance up to her cosy room above. She was so glad Hannah had offered her the work. Tom's mum had been distant since they split up, and Lucy missed her. Since losing her own mother years ago, Kathy had been a wonderful adopted mum. She had the cats for Lucy still, but Lucy couldn't talk to her about all this. She tried with Tom, and look where that had got her. She grabbed her coat and boots and decided to walk up to the nuns' derelict abbey. It wasn't far, and she needed to stretch and to think. With no Fedor, and therapists thinking it was all in her mind, she wanted to work out what on earth to do. Fedor had said she had to forgive. She knew what he'd seen. She didn't know how, but somehow, watching her colours swirl beautifully around her arms and legs as she walked, noticing a passing stranger head down with a floating balloon of purple above his head. Now, perhaps, just perhaps, she had to go back to the beginning and try to understand once more. Well, that or flop into the sea along with a long-lost prince's love, because she didn't think she could live the rest of her life with this cloud. She smiled at a small child walking with his mum. Children's colours were so beautiful, pale gold like the holy man she'd scrolled on her phone that time. It seemed dark emotions created deep colour, and purity of mind pale. Golden was reserved for the holy and the young. It sort of made sense, really. "Okay," she whispered, and the colours shimmered. "You win." She went and sat down on a boulder in the abbey. It was sad to see this place in ruins. She wondered what it must have been like with the nuns busying about, eating, laughing, praying. She closed her eyes, and before she knew it, she was asleep. She dreamt of fields and little men, and then suddenly she was in the abbey. She was watching it as if from above, and the room she was in was full of nuns kneeling on the ground, heads down, their headwear in gentle folds down their backs. The light streamed in from a high window and lit the hands of a nun. As Lucy watched, the woman tipped her head up and looked directly at Lucy. Lucy was terrified. She wanted to run away, but her legs wouldn't move. And then the nun's eyes got bigger and bigger until all Lucy could see was this pair of eyes. And they looked so sad. Lucy felt overwhelmed with sadness, and she felt a sense of love. Who is she? Thought the dream Lucy. And then she woke up. Embarrassed to be asleep in a public place, she jumped up and walked back down to the village and her room. The dream wouldn't leave her. As she lifted her arm, she noticed the colours had paled a little. After supper, Lucy had the strange feeling she was ready to go back in her mind to the year her mother died, the year that happened, some sense of being safe to do so, as if the nun's eyes had softened something in her. Tomorrow, she thought, and then she heard Fedor's voice in her head. "Let go, Lucy, and your skies will clear." Oh, why can't I just be normal again, she muttered to herself, making a mental note to call Tom's mum and check on the cats tomorrow. But as she climbed into bed and switched out her light, she was sure she heard a chuckle. To be continued.